Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for spending some time on your Friday dialing into this webinar with myself, Steve Keith, branding man, and my guest this morning, Bev Moxon. So we've just got, I can see people starting to join us now, which is great. The numbers climbing up steadily. So I'm just going to put myself on mute for a couple of minutes and then we will get going. Okay, so let's get started this morning then. So thank you for joining, everybody. As I've already said, for those of you that have only just joined, my name's Steve Keith. I'm the branding man, and with me today I have a wonderful guest, Bev Moxon. Good morning, Bev.
Good morning, Steve.
Excellent. I'm just going to leave you to this with this one.
Okay.
Tell us all about T-levels.
All right. Thank you. And my presentation today is about the T-levels. So I'm going to do some background information about where T-levels have come from, talk a little bit about the qualification, and then also about how employers can get involved with T-levels. So T-levels have been in development for a couple of years. They came out of a review looking at technical qualifications. Basically, the landscape for technical qualifications are quite complicated. There's lots and lots of different qualifications that you can do. So the review was basically looking at how they could simplify those qualifications, make it easier for students to understand, parents and carers, and also employers. And that's where the T-levels have come from. Very much so, the T-levels are about technical education, and they are at a level 3 qualification, so they're equivalent to A-levels. T-level themselves will be a mixture of classroom-based learning and on-the-job training. They are aimed at students who are doing their post-16 options, so those students that will be going on to college or going on to a sixth form college. They're very much about developing knowledge and experience, and they're about opening the door to employment. So these students will spend 2 years on a course. They will have a general understanding of the areas of work available to them, and then they'll look to do some specialism within their qualification as well. The T-levels are not live yet. They go live in September, but a lot of work has been going off over the last 2 years to prepare for the T-levels, and we want to get as much involvement from employers as possible. This slide shows you where T-levels sit within the post-16 choices, and this is at level 3. So for students, a typical T-level student would be an individual that wanted to go into the world of work but wasn't quite prepared to do that at the age of 16. They're not really sure what they might want to do at this stage, unlike an apprentice who would know from an early years that they probably wanted to do a specific job. So that's where they sort of sit between A levels, which are very academic, general subject base. In the middle would be the T level. So it gives the student an opportunity to find out a little bit more about the world of work, the job roles that are available, and how they can get involved with that. To be able to understand sort of the difference, I think employers are asking the questions around, well, what is a T level? How is it different to an apprenticeship? So this slide gives you the difference between the two. Like I say, the T level student are those that aren't quite ready for work. They're looking to probably go into the world of work, but not at the age of 16. The T level is largely classroom based, so it's a 2-year course that we'll be doing, but they do have a substantive industry placement as part of the qualification. And unlike the apprenticeship, which as an apprentice you are paid and employed from day one, and the apprenticeship is mainly work-based with some element of study within that. On completion of the course, the students will be ready to start work and they will be occupationally competent. So they won't be work ready as the apprentice because they're not doing something, say, particularly as a plumber, or they're not training to be like a digital marketer, but they will have experience of that area of work and will be ready to go into employment. This slide sets out the different qualifications that are available from T levels. So with those that are actually in the sort of orangey colour at the top, they are called the routeways. So this is where I'm talking about the student gets an understanding of that sector. So around the agriculture, the animal care route, they would have an understanding of that sector. And below that in the black are what are called pathways. So that's when they will begin to specialise. So once they've got an understanding of what's involved within that sector, they can sort of drill down to more of a understanding about a job role within that. The ones highlighted in purple are the ones that go in 2021. The red ones are the first ones to go in September, and they are around within the construction, digital, and in the education sector. So they will go live in September, and a lot of work's happening at the moment so that they're ready for delivery. Those that are in black, they don't come on until 2022 or 2023. So as you can see, it is a gradual rollout. In September, it will be a bit of a slow burn. Promotion is going out to students at the moment, but it is very much, it will be a small number of students that will be taking the first T levels in September. We've got around about 50 providers in England that will be delivering the T levels, and that will be gradually increasing to eventually rolling out by 2023 with all the subject areas. The next slide just gives you a quick overview of the qualification itself, so I won't dwell too much on this, but when I talk about the student having sort of a general understanding of the area of work, this one is around in sort of in the construction sector. So the first year they will do an understanding of design, surveying and planning, but then in the second year they would be able to do their specialism. So they would drill down to looking at maybe civil engineering, building services, hazardous materials, or surveying and design and construction in the built environment. So they would make a choice in the second year of that sort of subject area, work area that they want to go into. The industry placement, this is quite crucial in the qualification. They have to do an industry placement while they're on their 2-year study programme, as well as doing English and maths. So we know that the industry placement is quite a challenge. It's a 45-day placement with an employer, and that's why we've been working very hard with T-levels to be able to get employers in the mindset of how they can get involved with the delivery of T-levels and come on board with industry placements. The industry placement gives the student the ability to be able to put the knowledge and skills into practice. And there's a couple of slides further along where I'll talk about sort of the industry placement program itself and the expectations of what that would look like. You may think, well, why are we doing industry placements now? We've been actually trialing and piloting them for the last 18 months. The reason is that we know that there are a lot of asks on employers. There's a lot of programs where we're asking employers if they will offer up a placement. So we're very mindful of that. So with the T-level, particularly because it is a 45-day placement, we want to make sure that employers understand their responsibilities and how they can get involved with that. So as I said, we've been piloting it for like the last 18 months. It's been happening with students that are on vocational courses in colleges now. So they're not doing the T-levels, but they are doing a vocational course. Maybe they're doing childcare, they could be doing a digital qualification, it could be something in construction. So we've been looking at how those students have gone out onto placement, how it's been received by employers, and any improvements that need to be made or any developments to make sure that by the time T-levels are rolled out in 2023, that industry placement is well embedded within that. This just gives you an idea of a journey for an employer if they were willing to get involved with the industry placement. These are the sorts of things that you would need to be aware of. The qualification themselves are delivered in the main by colleges at the moment, and they are very keen to work with employers. So they would offer a lot of advice and guidance around what would be expected if you were offering an industry placement. So they would come and have a chat to you about where you think the industry placement will be best in your business, talk about how they would work with you around that, and design a sort of mini job description, which would then be given out to the students for them to apply for the placement. You would work with that provider to set the objectives for the industry placement. It's very much about how that student can put in their knowledge, skills and experience while they've been in the classroom. But for employers, it's about how you actually get a benefit from having that student, very much about what is it that they can bring to your business, have a meaningful project that they're working on, and it will be beneficial not only to the student but also to the business. You would have a discussion about any health and safety, liability insurance, or anything that would need to be sorted out before the student actually came on placement. And again, this is where the provider can help you to do that. The other thing is, while we've been piloting the rollout of industry placements, we have given training providers some funding to be able to support employers. So if any extra costs were incurred by getting involved with an industry placement, then you'll be able to talk to the provider about how they can support you with that. We've had some information that have come back from employers about maybe extra cost on insurance. It could be that you needed to have some extra equipment in the workplace. But as I say, the providers have got support funds available if there is extra cost incurred by taking on a placement. The student should be prepared to come out on placement. So before they join you, they may be asked to come and have a look around the workplace. Could be that they maybe do a couple of days induction before they actually start their 45-day placement with you. The provider will prepare them for their placement, But it's essential that you make sure when you're talking to the provider about what's required when they come on placement, that that information is shared with the student and they're up to speed before they join you. I put this slide up because it's still the case that industry placements are a challenge, and we do know that back in the Department for Education there is a team that are specifically looking at industry placements. They're making any tweaks, building in some flexibilities. There is the understanding that one size doesn't fit all for industry placement. So particularly in the digital sector, we know that employers work maybe as micro businesses, so it could be a one person business, so it's quite difficult for them to take a placement on. So it's looking at how that placement then could be shared with at least 2 employers. So that's one of the sort of flexibilities that have been built in. So if as an employer you don't think you could offer 45 days, you could still get involved with the industry placement, but it would be about agreeing how many days you think you would be able to give to that student. So there are some health and safety concerns as well, particularly within the construction sector, and also there's maybe the financial or resource cost to employers. But as I've said, there is a support fund to be able to work with employers about any costs that might be incurred. We've responded to feedback that we've had. So we know that employers who have been involved with the pilots have asked for more information about what is it when the student is coming on placement that an employer will be expected to do. So we're about to launch some guidance and some resource materials for employers, which would take them through what the stages of taking on a student. So prior to them actually joining them on the industry placement, there would be a tick list of things that would be covered. Again, this is worked through with the training provider, and we're also looking on top of the support funds that we have available with the providers to give to employers if required. They're also looking at what's called the Employer Pilot Support Fund, and this is actually where it's happening in 2 areas in the country, in the southwest, and I think it's also within the West Midlands as well. They are accessing additional support to the maximum of £750, which is payable to each employer who takes on somebody for an industry placement and can prove that there is additional costs in doing so. So this is the way that we're trying to support employers. There's resource materials, there's support packages in place, and also we're trying to support students because we realise that there are barriers to actually get into the placement as well. So there's a number of pilots looking at how we can overcome those barriers as well. The benefits that we've had feedback from employers about actually taking a student on an industry placement while they're doing their qualification is very much about how this can be a recruitment tool for employers. So it's getting to know that individual, they're coming into your business, they're actually adding to the bottom line, gives you an opportunity to work with that individual and look at longer term recruitment needs as well. It's also a way where employers have been able to sell their business, not only to the student, but maybe to their parents as well, getting your name out there, getting the business known. It's also about building sometimes the capacity of your employees as well. A couple of employers have used industry placements to be able to upskill their staff. So if an employee has decided they would like to mentor the student who's coming on their industry placement, then it gives them that opportunity to be able to put those skills into practice. We're also looking at whether we might be able to accredit some of the training as well. So if an employee is doing some coaching and mentoring, is there a module that could be accredited as well? So those are some of the benefits that we've had feedback about the industrial placement. And that's really the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. If anybody would like to contact me, know a little bit more about T-levels and industry placements, then you can contact me via email.
Thanks, Bev. Really interesting. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask? You just need to pop them into the Q&A box. So we've got a question from Stephen on here. How do I get a copy of the slides? I will send out a copy to, or if Bev's happy to share them, that is, first of all. Sorry, I forgot this is.
Yeah, that's fine.
We'll send those out to everybody that has joined the webinar today. So a question from Fraser here. So whose responsibility, apologies, sorry if this was covered, whose responsibility is it to arrange the placement, the student or the provider, Bev?
We found that it's mainly the providers that are doing that. They've got engagement teams that are out there talking to business about taking students on. So your local college will have a coordinator. So if you're interested in taking a student on, we actually can pass referrals on to local colleges and local providers for you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? So one from Anne Shackleton here. So hi, at what point in the 2-year programme is the placement designed to happen?
Oh, that's an interesting one, Anne, because at the moment, because we're piloting it with students that are doing general vocational subjects at the moment, it's happening anytime within that 2-year period. My understanding is when T-levels go live, that the industry placement would happen probably in the 2nd year, or there is some flexibility where they might be able to start in the 1st year towards the end of that 1st year and then complete the rest of that industry placement in the 2nd year. So it's very much about having a discussion with the provider about when you as an employer would probably want that industry placement and how that fits in with their curriculum planning as well. That's one of the constraints that we're finding, is that because the T-level itself is a very full program, it's also about the providers being able to schedule in all the exams that they need to do and fit the industry placement in. But as I say, the providers are very flexible. They would talk to you about how they could accommodate those needs.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Stephen here. So is there an outcome report that the employer has to do?
There's no outcome report, but there is a review meeting at the end of the industry placement. And I think some employers are actually giving a reference so that they're indicating, how the placement has gone, so the student's got something to take with them. That might be something that we might be built into the programme further down the line, but it's not actually built in at the moment.
And where is the list of FE providers and their locations?
That's an interesting one. I think if anybody's interested, if you just drop me an email, and I can't, we've got an internal system that we use to be able to find the training providers, but in the main, your local college will probably be piloting industry placements at the moment, but by all means just drop me a line and I'll find you your local provider.
Okay, thank you. And then have T-levels been embraced also by private schools at this stage? Just conscious that they might have better network and resources in terms of arranging placements with companies.
We've gone out to all our post-16 providers, and there are a few, should I call them like independent providers, that have got involved in the early stages of T-levels. The intention of the qualification is that it will be available to all students that want to do this at age 16. So it would be embraced by all schools, colleges.
And how do we get details of the education childcare course?
Okay. At the moment, the qualifications are still being written. So what would happen is the provider will be able to give you an outline plan of what the qualification looks like. I can also send a link to the standards themselves, because they are based around the apprenticeship standards for the qualifications. So it will give you an idea of what actually is within that qualification as well. But as I said, not all of them have been signed off yet. But I'll take that back and then I'll have a look and send the link to Stephen to circulate.
Thanks, Bev. Any more questions? No? Okay. Well, I will leave it there. I will say thank you to everybody for joining. We will, as I said, we'll send over a copy of the slides and any other information that we've highlighted there as well. There'll also be an on-demand version of the webinar that's been recorded that will be shared as well. And so that's pretty much it from me. So thank you very much, Bev, for your time. Really interesting presentation there.
Thank you for having the opportunity.
Wonderful. Okay, and have a good weekend, everybody. Goodbye.